Listening and being empathetic as a leader and establishing that network can go a long way to establishing common ground. And another thing to be mindful of, the broader the coalition, the broader the network that you're trying to establish for any policy or functional change that you want to get done, the more challenging it will be. The more disparate ideas you have about something, the harder it gets to get people to agree. And so the leadership of you to listen and be empathetic and continually put yourself in other people's shoes is even more important in those situations. It grows with importance as the coalition gets bigger and broader. One of the other things I think is really important for being a leader when it comes to networking and civic engagement is asking the right questions. There's a bit of an intuitiveness to this that comes with on-the-job experience. It's nothing I learned in school. It's nothing that a college class taught me. And I think college education is a lot of times overvalued in situations like this. When you ask the right questions, sometimes the why is far more important than the what or the how. And when you're listening and being empathetic, you can really get yourself in tone with those sorts of things as you're building your network and you're establishing a coalition as a leader. You're asking sometimes the why, and the what becomes way less important.
It's not just one day that you're civically active, one week that you're in the movement, but it's like a long-term, lifelong duty that you have to be uphold.
That is, man, that is one of the most challenging questions that I think faces our day and age. So I appreciate your insight there, George, on kind of identifying this. As a college student, I became extremely disillusioned with our system. I felt, let's see, I was in college in 2004 would have been a pivotal election when I was in college. And I remember thinking to myself that it didn't matter who won because nothing was going to change. I think the reason I got into local politics was because that is inherently not true, particularly at the local level. What I've taken as a tactic here is two things. One, try to educate people as much as I can about how important local government is. And if you want to see change happen quickly, your local government is where it's at. A common refrain from the political science textbooks is that local governments are the test tubes of democracy, where you can pilot an interesting project and have it turn around in 6 months to a year rather than waiting for federal consensus to try and roll something out at a national level. And the reason people feel like their votes don't matter is because on a federal level, it becomes really challenging to make that case.
How can we convince people to not just vote, but also help out in communities, convince them that the world needs more people to help out?
You can demonstrate that civic leadership and civic mindedness doesn't come in the form of policy and politics all the time. So I like to use neighborhood associations as a really good example of this. Neighborhood associations are not particularly political, but they can be depending on the neighborhood and the sort of economic demographics of it. Sort of really depends. But getting engaged in something like a PTA even is an example of civic mindedness. And I think to your point, Devin, that person may have said, oh, well, I don't want to get involved with politics. Leave that up to the people who care. And, they're not going to, one way or another, we won't be able to change anything that we want. But then you ask them like, oh, well, but like, do you participate in your kid's PTA? And they're like, of course, that's, that I wouldn't ever not do that, right? Because I care about my kids' education. And finding the thing that people connect with civically is part of that process for them that they have to discover on their own to a certain degree, I think. And that's just one, person's opinion. But once you can help somebody find that, whatever it is that's important to them, then you can also help direct that civic energy that they will grow naturally because they actually care about that prospect, right?